Hey BookTube, this is Jackie from Jack's Literary Corner, and I'm going to do a review. There it is. And this is also kind of an update on the project I decided to do this year, which is the Stephen King project. I finished my next Stephen King book, and that is Pet Sematary. This is the story of the Creed family. Our main character is Louis Creed, the head of the family patriarch. He decides to take his family to Ludlow, Maine, and gets a job as the college. I don't know I don't remember what his title would be, like college medic or doctor or whatever. And they are told by their neighbor Judd, their elderly neighbor Judd, who lives across from them, that they live on a very busy road that has a lot of trucks that drive really fast and that it's very dangerous for kids and animals. And with that being said, he also tells them about there is a pet cemetery behind their house where a lot of kids will bury their pets because a lot of them get hit by cars and trucks. And then Judd also first, during when Lewis's wife Rachel and their daughter and son Ellie and Gage are go to visit their Rachel's parents for Thanksgiving because Lewis does not get along with his in-laws. He ends up playing babysitter to Ellie's cat, Church, and the cat sadly gets hit by a car. So that leads Judd to telling Lewis about that beyond the pet cemetery is another cemetery, a Native American burial ground that supposedly holds the spirit of the Wendigo, this creature that's now I'm going by Charm's the show Charmed, not the new one, but the old Charmed from back in the 90s. Their definition of Wendigo was like a werewolf. And Supernatural, the show Supernatural, also in the first season there was a Wendigo in that one too. But the graveyard, the burial ground holds the spirit of the Wendigo, and that a lot of people bury their pets out there, and somehow their pets will come back to life, but they are never the same. They turn mean. They're like zombies. They're less than alive. I mean, I would say human, but they're not human. They're animal. They're pets. They're animals. But Judd encourages Lewis to bury Church out there in the cemetery, out in the burial ground, and I'm sure you can guess what happens. But then the worst tragedy strikes, and once again they are led to use the cemetery. Lewis persuades himself to use the cemetery again, and crazy, scary creepiness and chaos ensues. This book, I gave it 5 stars. And it is so much more than just a horror. I mean, you still have the traditional elements of a King horror novel, which is, the creep factor. In this case, it's kind of these zombie-like versions of dead things and coming back to life. But it's also, like, Stephen King, what he's best for is that his novels, what he's really good at is creating characters and real human people. Like, I see that all the time, in his novels. In the movie versions of his novels, he really understands people. And in this case, this book looks at grief and how different people deal with grief and death and loss and how different people handle it. Like, in the beginning of the story, Lewis is very practical. He's a medicine man. He's a medical man, so he's very practical, and he sees death as it's perfectly natural. Animals and humans don't live forever. And then animals will potentially pass on a lot sooner than humans, whether it's an accidental death like getting hit by a car or just old age. And then I think Judd looks at it as more like, it's a sad thing. He doesn't like it, but he also realizes it's part of life. Things happen. People, accidents happen, or people people get old and die, and yeah, it's not fair, but you can't control it. Although I think there's a part of him who, he is tempted about controlling it, like the way, with the whole Native American burial ground. He's the one that tells Lewis about it. And then you have Rachel, who lost her sister when she was very young. She witnessed her sister die. Her sister had, I think actually she had meningitis. Which actually, that's something that I had when I was born. When I was born, I had meningitis, but it was not the meningitis that kills you, obviously, because I'm still here. But she had the one that slowly that kills you, and it turned her into this monstrous thing. And Rachel, she was so young and she couldn't deal with it, and then she witnessed her sister eventually slowly die, and she feels like her sister blames her because she got scared and couldn't handle it, and almost wished for her sister to die because she didn't want to deal with it anymore. And then you have Ellie, who is just this little girl who this is all new for her, and she doesn't understand it, and she's trying to understand it. And when her dad tries to explain to her that Church could die before she does, whether it's an accidental death or just of old age, and she's like, no, God can't have my cat. God get his own cat. And she doesn't understand that she can't control that. Church will die. Things will happen in church. And, when other deaths are happening in the story, she's trying to understand them and comprehend them. She wants to know, she tries to look at it like her father does. While her mother's trying to protect her from it. It's like, you're too young, and, we shouldn't talk about death. Death is not something to talk about. Almost like she's denying that it happens. She's trying to pretend that it doesn't happen. That it's not natural, because there are some deaths that people that aren't natural, or at least they don't seem natural. I mean, like when I have had both my grandfathers died of illnesses, and to me that felt not natural. Even though one of them died of sadly of Alzheimer's, and that it still affects me today because I was very close to both of them, and I've been told, well, that's natural, that's what happens. Because, yeah, your memory does start to deteriorate, but it's almost like when you get Alzheimer's, it almost speeds up. It deteriorates a lot faster, it's a lot worse. And, I've been told it happens, it's not, and to me, though, it's not. Because if it was natural, then a lot of older people would get it. It wouldn't be considered a disease. And then my other grandfather died of cancer. And now I don't look at death the way Rachel does. I think I'm more on the lines of between Ellie, her father, and Judd, where it's sad and heartbreaking and wish it didn't happen, but I also understand that it does happen. You can't control it. So it's a very interesting, and as Daniel Green put it, disturbing, one of his more disturbing novels, and not in a scary monster kind of way, but in the fact that it's dealing with these people experiencing the loss, and it's unfair. And the other death that happens in here, that is kind of what leads to the climax, is it's the worst kind of loss you can experience. But it's I think it's just so good. And Stephen King's writing is so easy to read. I mean, he writes long books like the length, like It and The Stand, which are over 1,000 pages. But despite that length, he's such an easy person to read. They're not dense. It's not that hard to read them. He and a lot of times he has a bunch of short little chapters. He'll have one big section and then short little chapters, in between, and it almost makes it go a bit faster. But I still, unfortunately, I still take forever, obviously, to read The Stand or The Inn. I mean, I haven't gotten back to The Stand in a while, and I'm thinking, I'm reminded of how much details are in it that I almost think, I need to go back and reread it from the very beginning, because I already started, last year, or in 2017, I can't remember the last time I read it, but I had started it, and that's part of the problem, is I had started it, and I don't know if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, and I started it for my reread of it. So I'm a little uncertain about restarting that over. But either way, he's an easy to read. His books are very easy to read. I feel like they're very relatable. I mean, not everybody experiences great, like, people losing their loved ones. I mean, or everybody will eventually. Someone, you're gonna experience loss eventually, but not all the time. It's not, or sometimes even if you experience loss, it's not with someone that you're really that close with. But death touches everybody though. And that, I think this book is very important because of that too. And I think it would help people to really understand. It's not like a self-help, it's still a work of fiction, but it's a story that is about that, about, how losing people to death, and how a lot of different people cope with it in different ways. Like I said, and it does have the creep factor, which is very interesting. The only negative thing I have about King is that, other than I don't like every one of his stories, but that's more of a, like, it's just not my kind of story. It's not a bad thing it's not a criticism. But the one thing that I feel like is a criticism, but it's still kind of more of a preference, is that his books kind of drag out a little. His endings. Well, first of all, everyone always says they're bad. I don't necessarily think they're bad, but they do. Well, some of them maybe, but they drag out because he's like goes into the depths of every character, spends time with every single character that's still there, that's important in the story. So he drags it. That's the only problem. And again, as much as I enjoy the story, I was like, okay, is it over yet? And it's like, come on, how many more pages do I have to read to get to the end? Like, I was so close to the ending, but then there's like 5 more pages to read. But that's more of a preference thing. I mean, other people probably don't have. Not everybody has that problem, but for me personally, the endings can drag out a little bit. So this is the most recent Stephen King read I read for the project. And I'm going to start Rose Manor next, because that actually was last month's, or August. Actually, August's, read. August is, the read for the book of the, Missy from a Binge Readers Stephen King read-along group. This was the book they were supposed to read, I think, in August. Well, it might have been this month. I don't know. I have to double check. It might have been September. It might still have been this read. But, yeah, so either way, I know I'm behind. So I'm going to start reading this one. And, don't ask me to sum it up. I won't be able to sum it up until I start reading, although I did, but I'm only read, like, maybe the prologue. And from what I got from there, this woman, Rose, she's married to an abusive husband that has a temper. And I think if I remember correctly, the police show up, and he's like, in the first chapter or the prologue or whatever, and he's like, don't say anything. Like, shut up, keep quiet. Because he's probably on those, it's probably, of course, he's abusive, and he's like, don't say anything, and you probably, like, threatens her. I don't remember. But yeah, I'm gonna read this. And I might bring this with me to Virginia. And the good news, I can do that because it won't be October yet when we're down there. But I will probably bring one of my I think I'm gonna bring Middle March with me on that quick trip, that weekend trip to my sister's. So, anyway, gonna start that. So, I was just thinking, I was gonna do a review for the other book I just finished last night, but I decided, I might just go ahead and save it before talking about it for my wrap up for this month, for September, which I'll probably film that late. But, but since the Stephen King project is a separate thing, I went ahead and I want to do a review for that one. So, anyway, that is my review of Pet Sematary. It's a great Stephen King read. If you love Stephen King and you haven't read it, I'd say check it out. It's not as long as as It or The Stand. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe. And I will hope you enjoy your reading, and I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye!